So I'm happy to do this very briefly to talk to you about the reality of what it's like to live to two things. One next to an aggregate site, an active pit, and also very close to a large scale fill operation. Um, so of course, our concerns are human health risks, and Ian already covered the groundwater contamination. I also wanted to speak to the air quality concerns, as I am the executive director of the Canadian Network for Respiratory Care. And when a little over 15 years ago, got a little white envelope in my mailbox saying that a very old gravel pit that hadn't been operating in a long time was about to reopen 500 meters from my home. I was devastated, and my big concern was, on the health of my family. I had a young child, and didn't want to be exposed to the health impacts of particulates and other sources of contaminants that are in the air, as I have for over 20 years spent virtually every day of my life dealing with lung health and air quality causing adverse effects on lung health are a big part of that. But there's also cardiovascular effects, neurological impacts. Poor air quality is now linked to dementia, cancer, lots of health impacts. So there are countless examples of soil and water contamination. Virtually, I think Ian will attest to it, McLaurin, virtually every large scale fill operation that we've seen in Ontario has resulted in some type of contamination, and a few of them, Scugog was already covered. Here's the North Bay Airport. And this is the one that I was really involved with. And when I first met Ian, was the Voke Airport, which is up on Highway 9. And this was a loophole that developers used to that aerodromes were covered under federal legislation. And they used that as an excuse that they were making airfield improvements to bring in massive quantities of fill. In this went on for many years, and we did all kinds of lobbying to try to stop it. Ian helped us a lot, delegated endlessly. And finally, there was massive contamination found in the soil of cyanide. And the fill operator was forced to close the site. Now, that was in 2018. Here we are in 2025, 5 years later. No one has cleaned up the site. The operator, which was GFL, Green for Life, walked away from the fill operation and has just left that contamination in it. It's just a mess in the community. At least there was a nearby seniors resident community, over 300 seniors. At least they don't have to live next to it. I went over this afternoon to try to take some pictures of what was left behind. And I don't think people realize when they're bringing in millions of tons of this soil, like how high it becomes. And I was trying to get pictures to show you the perspective of just how high the mound of soil is on that alleged airfield. And then what happens in the winter when the snow starts to melt is, this cliff of, because this is non-native soil, and so it's really not permeable. And all of those contaminants come down, and the residents nearby had their basements flooded. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it's like living next to an active pit. No matter what the hours of operation are, they pretty much ignore that. So you're woken up first thing in the morning to the sound of equipment. The backup beepers were by far what drove me the most crazy. And apparently that's really common, the sound of the backup beepers for active extraction. The fill sounds are even worse because in addition to the backup beepers, the tailgates slam down on the ground and it actually makes your house shake. So in addition to the Vogue Airport, the pit near me, there's been a lot of fill brought in there, even though it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be being in rehabilitation, but the whole house will shake. My entire house just covered in dust. There's no amount of cleaning that can be done, which is an annoyance when you see it in your home, but it's more the health impacts that everyone in my family is breathing that in, and that's the big concern. Lots of questions about this motion that the mayor put forward. We were given no information because there is no application. It was just a motion. And I do want to say that the 4 councillors that voted in favor of it, because it wasn't all of council, was Councillor Tony Rosa, Councillor Napoli, Councillor Doug Mescal, and Mary Russo. Those are the 5 that tend to vote as a voting pack recently, that we see that over and over again. So that was the 5 that carried the motion. And while there was an addendum to the motion asking that some studies be done and brought back, they're very, very cursory studies and not the kind of studies that you would normally see with an application. And the property is zoned for extractive industrial. We believe that this needs an actual full zoning change. The property has been deemed rehabilitated by the Ministry of Natural Resources. The license was surrendered, and now it should be returning to an after use. So to do this under the current zoning for extractive industrial should not be allowed. I'd also like to speak to why this is so important, that this is a precedent for all of Caledon. If we allow this in this one pit, that we have 23 licensed pits and quarries in Caledon, 19 pits and 4 quarries, over 15,000 hectares, 6,000 hectares, about 15,200 acres of pits and quarries. This is a map of the current licensed pits and quarries, so there are new applications all the time, including the mega quarry that I'm sure lots of you have heard about, that the Forks of the Credit Preservation Group are doing a great job at creating awareness to oppose. But you have to look at this as potential for large-scale construction waste, commercial fill operations throughout Caledon. In addition to the licensed pits and quarries, the town's recent official plan process just expanded the number of, this is called the Chipmara map. It's high potential mineral aggregate resource areas, and this area, all this purple up in the Mono Mills area towards is all new. So they added a lot of additional areas where pits and quarries can be approved. So anytime we're digging holes, we're creating a space, because the construction industry, the developers have a problem with excess soil, and what a great opportunity. We have holes, let's fill them in. I will say, as someone who lived through many years of hell next to an active extractive site, the one thing that neighbors are promised is this is an interim land use and it will come to an end. Ours has fortunately come to an end. The Tottenham pit, it's called Tottenham, but it's in the Palgrave Estate residential area. And then you get, oh, some peace and quiet, the naturalization starts to happen. And now we're being told, oh my God, this could happen to you again. So it's very, very concerning to me that the pit that's near me could end up as a dump site as well. And that's all I had to say. And Eric, I'll turn it back to you.